written. The second thing I want to say about the presence of the angels is that this should not go without notice in terms of the whole scope of the life of Christ, as we've seen before with respect to the presence of angels in the New Testament. Ironically, the word angelos, or the word for angel, occurs more frequently in the New Testament than the word agape, the word for love. And the word angel, angelos, occurs more frequently in the New Testament than the word hamartia, which is the word for sin. So it may sound strange to your 21st century ears that in terms of numerical frequency, the New Testament speaks more often about angels than it does about love, and more often about angels than it does about sin. I only mention that in passing to show you how integral to the New Testament witness to Jesus the presence and the reality of angels are, and the fact of their concentrated activity in the New Testament, where though we find them appearing here and there in Old Testament history, there is this strong concentration of angelic activity in the New Testament, particularly as these angels are present as escorts of Jesus. We recall that before his birth, the angel Gabriel comes and announces the birth of John the Baptist to Zechariah, and then the same angel is sent to announce to Mary the birth of the Messiah. So we have angels involved at the Annunciation, angels involved before Christ is even born. And when he is born, the announcement to the shepherds comes from the heavenly host, who reveal the manifestation of the celestial glory that surrounds the birth of Jesus. Then again, we see the angels attending Jesus in the wilderness after he completes his 40 days of temptation and testing at the hands of Satan. When Satan departs and leaves Jesus in this deeply weakened condition, we're told that the angels come and minister to him. So now we see at the event of the resurrection that the announcement is made not by human messengers, first of all, but first of all by the divinely appointed messengers from on high, the angels, who also are present with Jesus at the time of his ascension into heaven, and we are told at the time of his return he would once again be escorted by the angels of God. And so we need to pay attention when we read through the New Testament to every time we see a reference to the angels and see how one of their primary tasks is not only to announce the significance of Christ, but also to be his defense and protector. Remember, he told Pilate, "You have no authority over me except that which is given to you from above." Let the soldiers understand, you can't take me unless I let you take me. He could call upon the heavenly host at any second, for which the whole Roman army would be no match. But in this case, it is the angels, two of them, who appear to the women and announce that Jesus was risen. Why do you seek the living among the dead? He's not here, but is risen. And then he reminds the ladies how this is something that should not be a shock to them, because Jesus, after the transfiguration, when he told the disciples that he was going to be delivered and he was going to suffer and he was going to die, he also told them he was going to be raised from the dead. But they forgot that part. They couldn't get past the announcement that he was going to Jerusalem to suffer and to die. And so this reminder is in the text. He said, remember how he spoke this while he was still in Galilee, saying, "The Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and the third day rise again." And they remembered his words. Has that ever happened to you, where somebody told you something, you forgot it, and then when it was repeated to you, you remembered it? You said, "Oh, yeah, I remember that now." But I didn't remember it until I had my memory stimulated by such a thing. This morning in this morning's paper, I was reading the sports pages, and they have this tiny little blurb in there on this day in history. They do that every day in the paper for world events, but this was particularly on the sports page. And this little blurb said, in 1895, the first professional football game was held in America. How many of you read that? Anybody? Oh, how many of you people read? Okay. You know, what we really need for this class is an artist to paint pictures for you. 1895, this is a little juicy bit of trivia, all right? 1895, first professional football game. Where was it? Between who? Pittsburgh. Well, not in Pittsburgh. It was close to Pittsburgh, and it wasn't in Canton. It was between Latrobe and Jeannette. The game was played in Latrobe, and Latrobe paid their quarterback $10 to compete in this league, and that was the beginning of professional football. And that quarterback is in the Hall of Fame because he was the first professional football player in America, and his name was John Brower. Okay? Yeah. Remember him? Well, I just got a letter this week. Believe this or not, from John Brower's daughter-in-law, who's in a assisted care facility. She's in her late 80s, lives up there in western Pennsylvania. See, I knew John Brower's son. He used to play golf with his son all the time, Jack. He was a dentist just like you know. And he could putt, you know, he'd just drive me nuts because we'd get on the green and he'd look at the hole and he'd say, open wide. You never want to play golf with the dentist. Yeah, it worked for him. Didn't work for me. So, anyway, they now remembered once they had their memory stimulated. Now, so then they returned from the tomb and told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. And their words seemed to them like idle tales, and they did not believe them. Now again, it's something to do with God's irony and poetic justice that the first eyewitnesses he used among human beings to testify to the resurrection were women, who in this day were not given very much social status. And when the women came back all excited from the empty tomb saying, he's not there, he's risen, and the angel came and told me that Jesus is alive and that he's risen, and the apostles looked at these women and said, sure he is. You know, they didn't believe it for a minute, thought this was just idle gossip, old wives' tales that they were hearing from their own company of believers, which is a real travesty on the first believers of the Christian church, that the men were so filled with unbelief that they wouldn't even believe them. However, it piqued Peter's curiosity enough that he arose and ran to the tomb. Now, you don't hear too often in the New Testament about people running. You know, we do get the admonition to gird up our loins, then we prepare for war. When you see the pictures of Roman soldiers in antiquity, you see, why are these guys wearing these tunics that were like skirts that fell just above the knee? Well, without the belt that they wore around them, those tunics would unfold and come down basically to their ankles.